The waves crashed gently against the shore as a golden sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. We were sitting at a private table on the beach. Our honeymoon dinner. Everything was perfect, or at least it looked perfect. I had booked the best resort, planned everything down to the smallest detail, flowers on the bed, champagne, even the exact song she loved playing during dinner. I wanted it to be the beginning of our forever. But she had barely touched her food. She kept glancing at her phone like she was waiting for someone to text her. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and her hand hadn't touched mine all night. Still, I tried to keep things light. "You okay?" I asked gently. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Then she said the words that shattered everything. I need space." At first, I didn't understand. I thought she meant space for the night. Maybe she was overwhelmed. But then she said it again. Slowly. Clearly. I think we rushed into this. I need space from the marriage. I just stared at her. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, scream, cry, beg anything. But I didn't. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. "Okay." She looked relieved. I looked at the ocean. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Not from her words, but from the realization that I loved her more than she ever loved me. That was the moment I knew. If she wanted space, I'd give her all the space in the world. I'd give her forever. I met Anya 3 years ago in the most unremarkable way, standing in line at a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday morning. I spilled my latte on her coat. She cursed under her breath, and I apologized with such awkward sincerity that she laughed. That laugh, light, genuine, effortless, was the moment everything changed. From that day forward, I kept bumping into her. Or maybe I just kept showing up at the same places, hoping she'd be there. Eventually, I asked her out. Dinner turned into hours of conversation. I'd never met someone who could talk about classic literature and Netflix dramas in the same breath. Someone who made me feel seen without saying much. She wasn't perfect, God. No, but she was magnetic. And I was drawn to her in ways I couldn't explain. We dated for over a year before I proposed. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet night under the stars on my apartment balcony. I gave her a ring, and she gave me a teary-eyed yes. I remember holding her in that moment and thinking I'd never be this lucky again. But now, looking back, the signs were there. There were nights she'd be on her phone for hours, claiming it was work. Friends I barely knew messaged me once, saying she was out at clubs when she told me she was home. I brushed it off. I trusted her. I loved her too much to question her loyalty. Or maybe I was too afraid of what the answers might be. I changed jobs to be closer to her. Took time off to help plan the wedding she said she didn't care much about, even though she micromanaged every detail. I remember how cold she got when I suggested a smaller ceremony. "Don't you want our wedding to be special?" She snapped. I gave in. I always gave in. My parents, especially my mother, tried to warn me. "She's beautiful, yes," my mother said once, "but she looks at you like you're useful, not like you're loved." I thought it was just parental paranoia. But slowly, over time, the cracks began to show. She'd go silent during arguments, leave the house without saying where she was going, come back late with vague explanations. I made excuses for her, even when the truth was clawing at my gut. We went on a pre-wedding trip, once a short weekend getaway. I planned the whole thing, but the entire time, she barely looked up from her phone. I remember asking her, "Are you even here with me?" And she replied, "Don't be so clingy." That should have been the moment I walked away. But love makes you foolish. It makes you hold on when you should let go. It makes you believe someone will change, especially when you've already invested so much of yourself into them. So I stayed. The wedding came. She looked stunning, like something out of a dream. And for a fleeting moment when she said, I believe it was all going to be okay, but something in her eyes didn't match the words coming out her mouth. Still, I convinced myself that the honeymoon would fix everything, that the escape from real life would remind her how much we loved each other, that the effort I put in, every surprise, every little note I left in her luggage, every thoughtful plan, would rekindle the magic. I didn't realize then that I was the only one fighting to save something already dead. And so we flew out hand in hand. Me, full of hope. Her, full of something else entirely. Regret, maybe, or guilt, or worse, nothing at all. The wedding was everything she wanted. A grand ballroom filled with flowers imported from 3 different countries, a custom-designed lehenga she spent months obsessing over, and a guest list that looked more like a networking event than a celebration of love. I barely knew half the people there, but she knew all their names, Instagram handles, and how many followers they had. I didn't care about the extravagance. All I wanted was her. I remember standing at the altar, watching her walk toward me, veil flowing, smile picture perfect, and for a moment, I truly believed we had made it, that all the little tensions and cold silences would melt away the moment we said, I do. We danced. We laughed. We smiled for photos, some of which I'd later look at wondering how someone could fake joy so convincingly. But even on that day, something felt off. She barely looked at me during the vows. Her voice trembled not with emotion, but hesitation. Our first kiss as husband and wife felt more staged than spontaneous. A few close friends commented that she looked nervous, but I chalked it up to wedding day stress. Later that night, in our hotel suite, I tried to talk about how surreal it all felt. She just nodded, scrolling through photos on her phone. I leaned in to kiss her, and she turned her cheek. Too tired, she said flatly. I told myself she needed rest, that tomorrow, when we flew out for our honeymoon, everything would change, that the beach, the sunsets, and the time away from it all would remind us of what we had. The next morning, she didn't pack until the last minute. I had to remind her of our flight time twice. She seemed distracted, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. When we landed, she barely looked out the window, didn't comment on the beautiful resort or the room I'd booked facing the ocean. She just tossed her bags on the bed, kicked off her heels, and collapsed with her phone in hand. Are you excited? I asked her, trying to hide the knot in my chest. Yeah, sure, she muttered without even glancing up. That was day 1. By day 3, she was already pulling away. And by day 5, she would ask for space. By day 5, the silence between us was louder than the crashing waves outside our villa. I'd wake up early every morning to watch the sunrise. I asked her to join me, once, twice, then stopped asking. She never got up. Most days, she stayed in bed scrolling through her phone or pretending to sleep. I booked a couple's massage. She said she wasn't in the mood. I planned a private dinner cruise. She said she was too tired. I even tried giving her space, spending the afternoon alone by the pool while she stayed inside. But nothing changed. She wasn't present, not emotionally, not mentally, not even physically most of the time. And yet, I held on to hope that maybe she was just overwhelmed, anxious, or just in a married life. Then came the dinner. I had worked with the hotel staff to set up something special, a candlelit table right on the sand, surrounded by tiny lanterns, with the sea just a few feet away. Her favorite wine was chilling. The chef even prepared a customized menu. She showed up late. No apology, just a distracted glance and a half-hearted smile. We ate in near silence. I tried to break the tension. So, what's your favorite part of the trip so far? She stared at her wine glass, then put it down and said, I need to tell you something. My stomach twisted. Okay. I think I need space, she said, her voice low but firm. At first, I thought she meant space for the evening. Maybe time to reflect, to be alone, to decompress. But she kept going. I think we rushed into this, she added. Everything happened so fast. The wedding, the trip. I'm just not sure this is what I want. I stared at her, unsure if I was hearing her right. You're saying this now? On our honeymoon? She looked down. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to say it before, but I've been feeling this way for a while. I felt something snap inside me. Not anger, not even sadness, just emptiness. I didn't say a word. I just nodded slowly and looked out at the ocean. The same ocean I had hoped would bring us peace, now mirrored the storm inside me. That night, while she showered, I saw her phone on the bed. Unlocked. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. There was message after message from a guy named K. Miss you already. Wish you were here instead of with him. Don't let him guilt you into staying. You're not happy. You told me that yourself. And the worst part? She replied, lovingly, freely, like she had never spoken to me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just took screenshots, sent them to myself. Then I calmly placed the phone back where it was. She came out, wrapped in a robe, and climbed into bed next to me as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just shattered the illusion of our marriage. As if she hadn't broken my heart with a whisper at dinner. She turned off the light and whispered, "Good night." I didn't reply. I lay awake the whole night, staring at the ceiling, realizing that the woman beside me had left me long before she said the words. She didn't just want space. She wanted out. And that night I decided I would give her exactly what she asked for. The morning after her confession, the sun rose just as beautifully as it had the day before. But something inside me had changed. She was still asleep when I got out of bed. Her breathing was soft, almost peaceful. I stood there for a while, just looking at her. A part of me wanted to shake her awake and scream, "Why?" But I didn't. I couldn't. What would be the point? She had already made her choice. I stepped out onto the balcony. The breeze cool against my skin. The ocean stretched endlessly before me. Calm, free, unbothered by human mess. I stared into it for what felt like hours. And then, for the first time in a long time, I cried. Not just a few tears. I broke down. The kind of crying that feels like something inside you is being torn out. The kind where you can't breathe, where your chest aches, where the silence feels heavier than any scream. I didn't cry because she cheated. I cried because I had poured everything into someone who never even tried to hold it. I cried because I had spent years trying to be the perfect partner, supportive, loyal, present, only to be abandoned in the most brutal, cowardly way. I cried because I had ignored every red flag, because I had convinced myself that love was enough to fix everything. I cried because I finally understood I wasn't mourning her. I was mourning the version of her I created in my head. The Anya who laughed at my jokes, who danced in the kitchen, who held my hand during thunderstorms. That woman, she never existed. I married an illusion. And the real person beside me was a stranger who didn't even have the courage to end things honestly. After the tears dried, something inside me shifted. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was suddenly clear. I opened my phone and looked through the screenshots I had taken. Every word she'd exchanged with Kay. Every sweet lie she told him while she shared a bed with me. And somehow, seeing it all laid out in front of me didn't break me further, it solidified something. I wasn't the fool anymore. She was. She had a man who gave her everything, who trusted her, built a future around her, and stood by her through every storm. And she threw it away for someone who hid behind initials and late-night texts. I opened my notes app and started writing. I didn't know what it was at first. Just raw thoughts, feelings, pain bleeding onto the screen. I wrote about our first date, her laughter, the moment I fell in love. Then I wrote about the cracks, the ones I had painted over for years. I wrote about the lies I accepted because I was too afraid to be alone. The words poured out like water from a burst dam. By the time I finished, it was nearly noon. She was still in bed, scrolling through her phone, probably texting him. I didn't say anything. Instead, I packed a small bag and left the room. I went down to the front desk and asked to book her an early return flight. The woman at the counter gave me a curious look, but didn't ask questions. On the way back to the villa, I stopped at a local shop and bought a small notebook. Later that evening, I placed it on her side of the bed. Inside was a handwritten note. You said you needed space, so I'm giving you forever. No questions, no drama, just the peace you clearly crave. The flight is booked. It leaves tomorrow morning. I'll be staying here alone. For once, for myself. R. I sent the screenshots to her phone with no message, then turned mine off. That night, I didn't cry. I slept better than I had in weeks. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt free. The morning she left, She didn't say a word. I heard her moving around the room, zipping up her suitcase, trying not to make a sound. But I was already awake, sitting quietly on the balcony, sipping black coffee and watching the waves roll in. She walked past me once on her way out, paused. Maybe she thought I'd stop her. Maybe she expected one last plea. But I didn't even look at her. I heard the door click shut, and just like that, she was gone. For hours, I just sat there, not thinking, not feeling, just breathing. And then something strange happened. I smiled. It wasn't forced. It wasn't bitter. It was small, quiet like the first crack of sunlight after a storm. Because for the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life, over my peace, over my heart. That day I wandered. I walked barefoot along the beach, ate lunch at a small roadside cafe, and didn't care that no one knew my name. I struck up a conversation with the old man who rented kayaks to tourists. He didn't ask about my wife. He didn't know I had one. He just talked about the tides and the wind and how people come and go. They come to escape, he said, squinting at the horizon. But the only thing worth escaping is the person you pretend to be. His words stayed with me. That night, I opened a notebook I had bought and began writing again. But this time, it wasn't about her. It wasn't about what she did or didn't do. It was about me, what I had given up for love, what I had tolerated in the name of loyalty. How many pieces of myself I had handed away hoping someone else would complete me. I had spent so long trying to keep someone else happy that I forgot what my own happiness looked like. And as I wrote, I realized something important. I didn't want her back, not because I hated her, but because I finally loved myself more than I loved the idea of us. That night, I deleted every photo of us from my phone, every text, every voicemail, not in anger but in release. I didn't need proof of what we were. I needed space to become who I was meant to be, the man who stopped begging people to stay, the man who didn't chase love that asked for distance, the man who understood that walking away isn't always loss, it's sometimes survival. That was the turning point, not a dramatic scream, not a big goodbye, just a quiet moment when I chose myself. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. It's been 8 months since that trip, 8 months since the woman I thought I'd grow old with walked out of my life without looking back. And you know what? I'm still here, still breathing, still standing, still healing. The first few weeks after I returned home were the hardest. Everywhere I looked, there were traces of her. Her shoes by the door, her favorite coffee mug, the playlist we used to dance to while cooking dinner. For a while, I avoided the apartment entirely, crashing on my friend's couch just so I wouldn't have to face the silence. But eventually, the silence became my teacher. It taught me to listen, not to others, not to the noise in my head, but to myself. I started running again, something I hadn't done since we started dating, because she once said it was boring. I found it calming. The rhythm of my breath, the pounding of my feet on the pavement. It became my therapy. I began journaling every night, not about her, about me, my thoughts, my patterns, my wounds. Some nights I wrote a sentence. Other nights I wrote pages. Slowly, I began to understand the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is begging for someone to see you. Solitude is finally seeing yourself. I reconnected with old friends, the ones she quietly pushed away. They welcomed me back like I had never left. And in their company, I laughed again. Real, chest-deep laughter that didn't come with conditions. People ask me if I've dated since. The answer is no, not because I'm bitter, not because I've given up on love, but because I finally realized I don't need someone to complete me. Love, if it ever comes again, will have to meet me where I am. I won't shrink myself to be chosen. I won't ignore red flags in the name of romance. I won't fight alone for something that's supposed to be mutual. One day, I came across a photo of her on social media, smiling, happy with him, the man from the text. It stung for a second, then it didn't, because that chapter of my life is over. And I'm not bitter. She taught me something I couldn't have learned otherwise, That love isn't about how much you give. It's about what's returned. I gave her everything. She gave me a reason to walk away from a life that wasn't truly mine. And now, for the first time in years, I feel whole. Not because someone filled the emptiness inside me, but because I stopped waiting for someone to do it. I filled it myself, piece by piece, step by step. And in doing so, I found something I never expected. Peace. Sometimes, life doesn't give you the closure you think you need. It gives you the lesson you were avoiding. I thought she was my forever. I thought marriage meant safety, commitment, loyalty. But forever isn't a promise. It's a choice that has to be made every single day. And she stopped choosing me long before I ever realized. Looking back now, I don't hate her. I don't resent her. In fact, I thank her, because her betrayal forced me to confront something I never wanted to admit. I had abandoned myself long before she ever did. I made excuses. I justified her distance. I carried the weight of our relationship alone, calling it love when it was really just fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of failing. Fear of starting over. But starting over was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, I wake up without anxiety. I don't check my phone, waiting for someone who barely cared. I don't walk on eggshells, hoping not to upset a person who never learned how to love without control. I'm not bitter. I'm better. And I've learned something I wish I had known earlier. Never beg someone to stay. Never chase someone who walks away. Never silence your needs just to keep peace in a war you didn't start. If someone asks for space, let them go. Don't fill that silence with self-doubt. Fill it with healing, with growth, with you. Because you deserve a love that feels like peace, not like pain disguised as passion. You deserve someone who chooses you, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And until that person shows up, become that person for yourself. I did, and I've never felt more free.